The subject, protecting sensitive material from unauthorized disclosure in upper press. This memorandum directs the prohibition of press pass holders from accessing room 140 in the West Wing, also known as upper press, which is situated adjacent to the Oval Office without any appointment. This policy will ensure adherence to best practices pertaining to access to sensitive material. This is the one that gets me. As a result of recent structural changes to the National Security Council, the White House is now responsible for directing all communications, including on all national security matters. It always was. In this capacity, members of the White House communication staff are routinely engaging with sensitive material. No, they're not. They tell them what they want them to tell us. And if you've got some sensitive material, put it in your desk or turn off the computer screen.
Put it in a safe.
Or a safe. In order to protect such material and maintain coordination between the NSC and White House staff, the press are no longer permitted without a prior approval in the form of an appointment with an authorized White House staff member. I guess unauthorized White House staff members aren't allowed. But anyway, we can freely engage with White House press aides in the lower press area outside of the briefing. I know, Jim, I'm just going to go. You're shaking your head, brother. Go for it.
Man, I will say that, the press team over at the White House, this press team over at the White House right now, led by Caroline Leavitt, it might be the most incompetent in American history. And it is. It's. I mean, yes. Spicer on day one when the inauguration crowd. I mean, it's hard. How do you outspice?
It just went downhill after him.
Yeah, I mean, it did. But I do think Caroline Leavitt is giving it a run for his money. And I mean, to me, what is the old saying about press secretaries and press teams? When the national security folks want to keep them in the dark, it's sort of like their mushrooms keep them in the dark and feed them shit.
Yes.
They don't tell the press teams all that much anyway in terms of what to tell the press, because they're just always, ultra concerned about national security secrets, maintaining, some kind of lid on classified information and so on, to the point where it's probably just ridiculous. But I mean, this is putting all of that to the side. What's really going on here, and John and Brian, feel free to disagree with me, is that we're just seeing little by little over the course of several months, just a completely, tightening of press restrictions with the Trump administration. And, was kicking out the Associated Press. Right. Kicking the Associated Press out of the Oval Office and Air Force One, trying to regulate who gets to come into the Oval Office, where you now have these sycophantic state media-like outlets asking Trump questions, and they're just ridiculous suck-up questions. I mean, it's an embarrassment to the United States of America. And now this. And what they're trying to do is, for the folks at home who don't understand how this works, we in the press corps have the ability to leave the briefing room, go through the doors that are sort of to the side of the podium, go into an area called lower press, where there are some lower level press aides that you can talk to and ask questions about. Yeah, the wranglers. And then you can go up this hallway and past the Secret Service guy. And then there's upper press. There's an area up there where the press secretary is, the communications director, and so on. Those folks tend to know a little bit more than what the people in lower press know, which is not very much at all. And so they're just trying to keep the press further and further away from, these people who are paid for with tax. I mean, their salaries are paid for with our tax dollars.
Yeah.
And it's just absolutely a joke, and they're out of control. And as I like to say, out of their minds.
Well, yeah, what little minds they have. But to add to what you're saying, I mean, when I would go up there, and I've been, God, I'm old, been going up there since Reagan, but I would walk up there like during cabinet meetings or whenever there were people visiting the White House. You could stand up there and wait, and then they would come out and you could talk to them. For the people who don't know, this is one of our greatest access points to an administration. Anyone coming out of the Oval would invariably come drifting down that hall at some point in time, or out of the other hall that led, that's right off the circle of the Oval. You go up and you make that right into upper press, but if you go straight, you'd end up being wrestled to the ground by Secret Service agents. But those people, if you stood right outside that door, you could catch, especially during cabinet meetings, pretty much every cabinet member when they left, and you could get a sound bite or an interview or just something from them. And
Yeah.
now this is just simply, I think, to your point, Jim, it's just about shutting us down completely,
Yeah.
not wanting us to have any access that's not pre-approved. And that's what this memo says. And I think it's chicken shit that they drop it at 5 o'clock on Halloween
Of
Friday
course. Of
afternoon.
course.
Yeah, it's just chicken shit. And John, you were saying earlier before we went live that you have actually talked to some of the people in the White House who they've been upset with this they wanted us out of there from day one.
I don't know if they want us out of there. They certainly want to control it. The president wants us there.
Well, they were uncomfortable with us being up there in upper press.
Oh, upper press, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Upper press, sure. One thing about the NSC press was always, I found, 3-4, wow, feeling old now, 3-4 administrations now into this. I loved all the NSC press offices that I worked with. I found them, for the most part, helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They wanted to explain things. They didn't want you to get things wrong, especially. They would wave you off things. They would correct you. They would give you a little bit more than I found a lot of times you would get from the White House press office. So that's gone. I can report that about a month and a half or 2 months into this term, little reporter trick, I tried to go around the press office and I sent some questions directly to NSC Press. And that was intercepted. And I got an email about 2 minutes later from one of the deputy White House press secretaries saying, you don't need to reach out to them anymore. We do it all. So they turned that off really quick.
Interesting.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
turned
because
that
I
off
remember when
really
you used to be
quick.
able to email the NSC people and
Right.
ask them questions, and they would
were
say on
always
background
helpful.
from a senior
Yeah.
administration official,
Right.
you've done this, that, or the other thing with this country over here.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild. That is really, because
Yeah.
the tradition has been going back multiple administrations, and I remember this from the Obama years, is that you would have professionals at the NSC.
Right.
And sometimes they might come from CIA or state or whatever. They
Exactly,
might be
yeah.
press people from those
Yeah.
institutions, those departments, and they would be kind of trained in just the facts. Just give you some information, whatever I can give you, I can give you. Usually it's on background because they don't want their name published and so on. And that would be a way for the press to get access to information to give to the American people about what's happening on the national security
Right.
front. And
Yeah.
that's very important stuff. So,
Absolutely.
if it's going to go through the sieve of politics and the White House and, the amateur hour apparatus that they have over there, that's not good for anybody.
No, well, and I remember this is how old I am. I remember when upper press, we would go into the press secretary's office. This is during Clinton. This was during the first George Bush and during Reagan. And they would we would go in there and there'd be 15, 20 of us asking questions all on background. They bring in the people to talk to us about, out of the NSC or out of wherever it was that we were, it could be out of the SEC or the FAA, whatever. And we would sit up there and it would take sometimes an hour, but we would go through the background, go through the issues, and it was all from people in the know. Now everything is going to be filtered, not through anybody who's actually got direct responsibility for anything, but it's going to be brought to us by the mouthpieces from the PEP secretary, who can never say anything other than Donald Trump is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Who wants to sit through that?
And don't forget Mr. Chung.
Well,
his role in this is pretty
Mr.
big.
Chung,
I could say that early on, I was told by someone who's no longer there, probably why he's no longer there, that Caroline Leavitt and Mr. Chung and the other inhabitants of Upper Press just hated that we would go up there. And I mean, we all, the three of us, or the three amigos back together, we would all stand up there and in
that hall for sometimes
Hallie,
20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Hallie Jackson, Steve Holland, the whole crew, Jeff Mason. We all stood up there in the first term, waiting on Sarah, waiting on Sean, sometimes waiting on Stephanie. But
there was a lot of us waiting up there. I remember when Michael Flynn, the national security advisor, was about to resign. And there was this, is he going to resign? Is he not going to resign?
I remember that.
And we're all lined up in the hallway outside of, was it Sean Spicer's office or Sarah?
Yes.
Sean Spicer's office at that point. And back in those days, I mean, as god awful as Sean was, and how he gaslighted us and all that stuff, I mean, he did work with the press from time to time. I mean,
Yeah. And I
and they
still
knew
had
they had a job to
sources
do.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
right.
today, I mean, the very first day I was in the White House, I went into upper press with Helen Thomas and Sam Donaldson. And
Yeah,
I just remember following them around. And I felt so, well, you're 24 years old, you're walking up there and you feel privileged. But how they
yeah,
can, Helen Thomas told me she would sit up there, and Joe Lockhart, who was with the Clinton administration, told me this story about Helen, and Helen confirmed it. But Joe said Helen would sit out there in upper press and not say a word, but just sit and watch for sometimes an hour. And so he said, Helen, what are you waiting up here for? And she said, you really are a dumb son of a bitch, aren't you, Joe? And he goes, okay, I'll bite. Why am I dumb? She goes, I can sit up here and observe, and I know what's going on before you tell us. The principal job of a reporter, observation.
yeah,
And that has been taken off the plate because we
yeah.
can't see what's going on in the people's house anymore. And
Yep.
Well, and you add to this what they're doing over at the Pentagon right now, and everything else. It's just slowly tightening the noose. It's slowly tightening their grip around information in this country. And I remember there was a rumor going around, and this was just chatter inside Trump world, that they wanted to just kick the White House press out of the building
yeah,
altogether. I mean, we've all heard that rumor, that they just thought,
yeah,
well, they'll set up one of those buildings on Lafayette Square where we'll show up, or EEOB, and they'll do the briefings over there and just kick us out of the building altogether. I would not be shocked if something like that happens between now and the end of this Trump administration. Even though he loves the cameras and everything else, they'll work out some deal where the networks will go along with it, and that we'll have to race over from EEOB to get into the Oval Office, but they'll just kick us out of the building together. And I think that that's something that I could totally see Caroline Leavitt doing.
yeah,
And that would
absolutely.
really block us from getting access to information. It would make it very difficult for us to do our job.
Unless you're the favored people in the pool. And like you said,
Exactly.
Jim,
That's it.
he
And they want to
loves,
make that's what they want. They want a
yeah,
carrot and stick system where the chosen ones, the ones who play ball, get along, and don't piss them off, those are the ones who are going to get the access, and the rest of everybody else will just get left out in the cold.
and he'll just buy up he's having all his friends buy up the media anyway, so they'll all be
That's
friendly to
right.
him. Here's my question for both of you. And this is what really chaffs my ass at some point in time, but I'm tired of him calling what we used to call pool sprays, press availabilities. I'm tired of him calling them press conferences,
Yeah.
because that's not a press conference. That's when a press conference is you stand there on the podium, you take questions from everybody. It's an open press event. Anyone can ask a question, and you sit there and you take questions and answers and the follow up. That's why they don't do it, by the way. That was another thing Joe Lockhart told me one time. He says, Brian, I always knew when I was in trouble when reporters started following up on each other. Like Jim would ask a question, I would follow up, John would follow up,
Oh
and
God, they
then
don't do it anymore. It's terrible, right, John? I mean, it's hard to watch.
It can
yeah,
be. We're not getting called on. We're in the fifth row these days of the briefing room,
Mm,
and it's tough sledding back there. It's 3rd and 1 every question, trying to get across. And I want folks to do it. Phil Wegman's pretty good. He's our neighbor in the briefing room. He's done that on occasion when she's
yeah,
gone to him. She thinks it's a safe question. Phil's actually not a safe question. So there are pockets of that. There were 1 or 2 briefings this year where everyone has worked together, and she did get flustered. And of course, her
and
move
walks
is,
off.
and that's what I was gonna say. Her move is to abruptly leave. So it does happen. It doesn't happen in pool sprays anymore. I've tried to follow up. I know Steve Holland followed up on me one time recently, but that's where I notice it really doesn't happen. And we're not getting much out of the press briefings anyway with Caroline.
yeah.
And I would like to see a little more of that from the pool when we're in the Oval, the cabinet room, wherever we get the president. If we would work together a little more, And that used to, if you have the right pool lineup, there is some coordination before we go in, but it doesn't happen every time.
And
Yeah, Jim.
I'll tell you something. I talked to a major network correspondent just the other day. This is recently. I can't mention any names, who said to me, Jim, it is a waste of time to go to these briefings. It is so performative.
I think I know who that is, but go ahead.
Caroline just, and I don't want to violate
Yeah,
anybody's, anything,
no, we won't.
but, he said that, this correspondent said that she just lies and it bullshits and it's, and just berates people and abuses people. And it's just all a performance and there's just no benefit out of it. This is a major network correspondent who said this
Yeah,
to me. And so the press is frustrated. There's no question about it. You might not hear about that on the nightly news or on cable news, but they're frustrated because they
Yeah.
don't like this arrangement.
There's a ton of frustration when I'm even just working from the White House. We talk about it amongst ourselves. I hear people grumbling. You hear conversations, and just kind of the look on everyone's face, the frustration. It's real, and it's by design.
yeah.
By design.
It is. That's the thing, and this is a continuation of what he did in the first administration.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to what happened to you and me, Jim. I mean, he tried that. His first pushback was to just yank press passes,
Right.
and he couldn't, and that did not work. So and it was so what he did do since then was limit. You may actually have a hard pass, but
You can
that
get on
doesn't
the
mean you're going to
grounds.
have access to anything. So
Exactly.
he hasn't yanked the press passes. He's created another level, another blockade level before you can get to him. So he doesn't come out in the press briefing room. He doesn't have press conferences. It's only the press pool. He's rigged the press pool so that most of the people that are there are people who will ask him the softball questions.
Yep.
And when John's there or others and ask real questions, it doesn't last too long. Every once in a while, you get a glimmer of a good question, and
And he's not doing many press conferences, is he? He's
no.
doing these sprays. He's doing these impromptu moments where you can ask a
Mhm.
question, Air Force One. It's always set up where it's really hard to hear the reporter talking, and
Yeah.
it's really easy to hear him talking. They love those kinds of scenarios too. But right, John? He's just not doing a lot of press conferences. And what was the thing that they knocked Joe Biden for all the time? Oh, you don't talk to the
Right.
press, no press conference.
Right. So they've just redefined it, right? They've just redefined what a press conference is, which is very on brand. I do have to say, sorry, Brian, the reporter brain in me is going to kick in.
Go ahead.
We have seen
Feel free.
47 in the briefing room already more times than we
Twice.
saw 46. Biden
Twice.
came out twice.
Yeah.
So it's 2-1. So just
Oh, I'm not
put that out
defending
there,
Joe
yeah.
Biden with the press.
No.
I mean,
No,
no.
I
To me,
won't
that was-
defend that either.
that was a major mistake on their part. I didn't cover the Biden White
Agreed.
House. I was an anchor at that point. And Brian, I think you and I talked about this.
Yeah.
Major mistake on the part of the Biden White House. And this happens with candidates and campaigns, and I see this happen from time to time. They try to shield the principal from the press because they think, oh, we might get a soundbite, it'll be a bad news day, and so on. But what you end up doing is you insulate that person so much that when they do have to communicate, they don't do it as
They
well.
can't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's
you're
exactly
absolutely-
what happened.
You
And,
screw yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I tried to tell that to the Biden people. I tried to tell that to the first administration of Trump. None of them listen. They all think they know better, and it's always and forgive me because now I am the old fart in the room, but I see a 27-year-old press secretary, and there's no way in hell she understands the nuance of this
Anything.
job. She has
Right.
not the experience.
Yeah.
So when you tell them that, and I ended up
And we have to be
telling
careful that we don't. I'm not saying that the Biden people are exactly the same as the Trump people. If
No.
anybody's watching this and thinking that, of course, that's not what I'm saying. Biden wasn't taking press passes away or kicking out Fox or anything like
Right.
that. But
they
it's
just communicated poorly.
and they had a big messaging problem. It is what it is.
Yeah, I remember having the conversation with Jen Psaki and then later Karine, and what they didn't understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, I said, listen, you need to talk about that $1 trillion infrastructure bill. That was a bipartisan effort, the greatest bipartisan effort we've had in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And I was told on 2 occasions by 2 different press secretaries for Joe Biden, we already mentioned that once. And I go, what you don't understand is that whatever oxygen you don't take, Trump will. So if you don't
Yeah.
keep beating that drum, you're just going to get beat by the drum. And that'll be the drum beat will be Donnie. And I don't think
Yeah.
they ever got it. I
No,
don't know.
Instead, they ran on a climate bill that they called an infrastructure bill, and then Biden himself admitted, "I wish we hadn't called it that." Just stunning stuff. But back to Jim's point about Trump not doing press conferences, a great example was this Asia trip. We didn't get anything at the end of that. The reason or excuse was, well, the trip was just too jam packed. We didn't have time. So when he finished with Chinese President Xi at the airbase, they both just went and got on their planes
He
and
likes
left.
to do the thing on Air Force One where he comes to the cabin and he talks to like 4 or 5 reporters. And if somebody asks a question he doesn't like, he berates that person. And, depending on the personality there, depending on the person, they may not push back, or they might. I mean, Katie Rogers, I think, got him to say some stuff the other day that was quite interesting about the nuclear testing. Donald Trump wants to resume nuclear testing. I mean, that is a siren that should be on everybody's television screens right now. But, the press, they're just not covering. I mean, the larger issue, Brian and John, is that the press in general is not covering Donald Trump as tough as they should. The corporate media is not. They're just laying down on the job. Their bosses are afraid. The corporate ownerships are afraid. And that trickles down to the reporters, the lowly reporters over at the White House, who just are like, I'm a little gun shy. It's not worth that phone call from my boss.
Job. Right. Yeah, I get you.
Not worth it. Not worth being frozen out. Get the bad shifts. Maybe my contract won't get renewed. I mean, I'm telling you, this is what they all think.
I'm with you. Well, here's my question. And John, you're there, and Jim, you and I have seen it firsthand. Do you think that any of this shutdown or this pushing away of the press has in any way anything to do with his mental or physical health?
I think it could.
Yeah.
I think it could. John, what do you think? I mean, the way they've handled his health has been weird.
Yeah,
it has been weird. We do a podcast every week, Jim, and I said on that podcast with Brian last week that someone can be unwell and it's not terminal. And there are plenty of signs that, I mean, he's 80, he's overweight, and we know about the heart issue. We know about some of the heart issues. We don't know about all. There are other pieces of evidence. The other day in the Oval, I believe the drug pricing event, he stood up while, he had everyone speak, went around the room. And the next day, the president, the 79-year-old president with the swollen ankles, had another event in the Oval. It was set up the same way. A bunch of officials were going to speak after him. He gave his spiel. And then he said, I stood up too long yesterday. I'm going to go have a sit behind the desk while everybody talks, and then I'll take your questions. My jaw dropped. I'm sitting right here. My jaw dropped that he admitted that he needed to go sit down. So there are signs here. And, nobody wants to be lectured again at that dinner that we missed the story. By the way, we didn't miss that story about Biden. We did not.
No, we did not. I didn't. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah,
that's one of my pet peeves.
Mine too.
I think it's such a
I don't think we're missing this one. I think we are chronicling that physically, clearly he's lost a step. And I don't say that as a criticism. My own father is the same age, has some of the same issues.
Same with my dad.
Human. Yeah, he's just a human,
That's right.
Well, Jim?
Well, no, I was just going to say, I mean, he's gotten another MRI. We don't know what the whole deal is with that. The other day on Air Force One, he's talking about how he aced his cognitive test, with the rhino and the lion and everything, and the drawing the line from A to 1 and things like that. These are things that any simpleton should be able to do. And he is getting that mixed up with an IQ test. And then he says AOC and Jasmine Crockett are low IQ. And he's saying in the same context of talking about a cognitive test. Now, that to me says he's just like he's jumbling things up. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm being too critical, but I don't think I'm being too critical. Like, you shouldn't be jumbling those things up. A cognitive test is a cognitive test, and an IQ test is an IQ test.
Well, look,
one is not the other.
One isn't the other, but I mean, I'm going to say it bluntly. I see quite a difference between Donald Trump 2 and Donald Trump 1. And at the end of Donald Trump 1, I thought I saw him beginning to sundown a little bit. And now I think it's I mean, I remember seeing you both saw, the palsy, the handshaking, the leaning forward, sometimes not being cognizant of where he was, and then
The way he
going
went batshit crazy after losing the election.
Yes.
I mean, he went nuts. He went,
yes.
that was nuts. I mean, that's my personal opinion. I thought he lost it, completely lost it mentally. And I don't know, did he get it back?
No, I don't think. But Jim, I think he lost it. Remember the first midterm elections, and it was that we were in the East Room, and that was that particular press conference in which I was asking, would it be, is it going to be, if you said if they didn't work, if the Democrats don't work with you, you're going to be on a war footing, and he said war footing, and then I was going to follow it up. I gave the mic over. You asked him a question, and he went batshit nuts.
Yep.
And that's when he yanked your press pass. And it was and I mean, other reporters came to your defense and go, "Hey, he's a decent guy," and he's going, "No." And I have never seen that out of
I know it's true. And when you go back and watch that video, I mean, I saw it the other day because I was talking to a class. Of course, the professor always wants to show that video, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, with the the benefit of hindsight, I'm like, I don't know, what did I do that was like that bad? It was like it was
nothing, brother.
He was interrupting first, and I guess then maybe I was interrupting a little bit. It was a little bit interrupting, but it wasn't like bad interrupting or being a jackass or anything. It was.
Well, all right, let's go back to who was
people might think I'm a jackass, but acting like one in that moment, that's two different things.
Yeah. How about I think it was Dan Rather with Nixon, and Nixon got testy with Rather and said, "Are you running for office?" And he goes, "No, sir. Are you?" And I mean, that was far more indolent than what you did, or what anyone has done. Simply asking a question is not the basis for yanking.
People forget that same press conference. He was nasty and rude to April Ryan. He was nasty and rude to you. I think there's several reporters. He was in a sour mood because they lost the midterms and so on.
Yes.
And to me, that was just him like being in a really awful mood.
And then he took it out on you.
Yeah. But I think that after the election, that's my personal observation. Something happened to him where he just could not handle it. And the switch went off, and he does not seem normal to me now in the White House. I don't want to get John in trouble because he still goes in there. He does not seem like he's playing with a full deck. I'm just going to say that now that he's in office the second time.
John, you're not going to go there. All right. Well,
I'm not there physically to observe him,
to see it.
But so it doesn't. Something seems off.
I think there's something definitely off. I mean, the cankles, but John, you're
bruises, there. Disappearing, the poop bag that went out the window that one day, or whatever that bag is that went out the window, and they were saying it was AI. And then he says the Canadian thing the other day with the Reagan ad was AI. Like that's his new lie. That's like his go-to lie now. He's like,
and that Reagan loved tariffs.
AI, that's what he says now.
I remember the Reagan loves terrorists thing. I have to laugh because I was actually covering the White House, and I know damn well that Ronald Reagan spoke against tariffs on
old school Republican.
Yes,
old school California Republican, free markets, Chamber of Commerce, shit like that. Of course, Ronald Reagan not for tariffs.
Yeah. So to hear that, I think he's lost his mind, but that's just me. So look, I'll close it up because we've been at it for about half hour. I know everybody's got someplace to go.
And we've gotten John in trouble. John's in so much trouble.
Oh no!
Disclaimer at the end of the show: our opinions are not necessarily those of John.
We'll see. Well, we'll find out. We'll find out about 9 o'clock on Monday if that hard pass works. Well, no, that's how we'll know.
Join the club, John. Join the club.
Yeah, really. We've been there.
Yeah, exactly.
You're in good company, brother.
Come on.
That's right.
Fine.
That's right. That's right. I will say, and Brian, we've said this before on the podcast, is as the lowly print reporter in the room here, it is hard. And I guess for the TV folks, when they're clipping video, it is harder to get a quote this time, and that wasn't a problem. That was not a problem last time. It's harder to mold it, and I find myself using a lot of partial quotes, and I find myself using a lot of brackets within those partial quotes sometimes. So, you know, again, he's a 79-year-old guy with a stressful job. He's had some traumas in life. So again, you know, I think a lot of this is fairly
and also,
normal,
let's just say,
but that doesn't mean he's the same guy he was. He's not the same guy he was in 1.0.
And we didn't even talk about the fact, because we all worked at the White House. He knocked down part of the fucking White House without getting that, without clearing that with anybody in Washington, D.C. We are living in historic times. That is one of the most batshit crazy things I've ever seen a president do, ever.
Well, and to clarify, yeah, no shit. Well, everything that
anyway, that's a whole other show. But I mean,
it is a whole other show. But you know, Mary, his niece,
it's gone.
It's crazy.
Mary Trump told me something that I quote often, and I live by it. There is no worst with Donald Trump.
Well, that's true.
Every day is worse. So there is no bottom of the barrel with this guy. He'll dig through the bottom of the barrel and go through the earth and keep going through the center of the earth, and there's just no bottom.
That's right.
And so but what you're talking about, Jim, is one of the things that is and this is my last question to you guys, because I know you got other stuff to do, but my question is, can we in the press get it back?
In a different administration, yes. Sure.
You think?
Yeah, I think so. Probably Republican or Democrat. I mean, I think maybe if it's a President J.D. Vance, maybe not, but he seems to love those cameras. I don't know. He seems to really love those cameras.
They seem to be prepping him, don't they?
But the GOP has moved in such an authoritarian direction. My suspicion is that that's an open question as to whether it would happen under a Republican president. Under a Democratic president, I think, yes, I think it'll be fine.
Well, I think we'll end up with a normal level of bullshit from a Democratic president.
Yeah, I mean, you're always dealing with trying to get information, and it's frustrating, and you're getting spun and things like that. But this is next level. Next level.
Yeah, it's in a different it's in a different atmosphere, different realm, different universe. I mean, I remember it was Ronald Reagan's press secretary, Larry Speaks, who said, "Don't tell us how to stage the news, and we won't tell you how to report it." Yeah. And today they stage it and have stacked the deck so it's reported the way they want it reported. And as you know, as I learned when I first got there, it's their job to put their best foot forward. It's our job to hold them accountable. As you've said numerous times, Jim, truth to power. That's what we're there for. And we can't do that right now. And I won't put John on the spot because I know he's still going there. But that's
that's it. I mean, that's the job.
Yeah.
Comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, I think, was an old expression used back in the day. And I mean, that's our job is to rattle their cages a little bit, make them uncomfortable, turn up the heat, hold their feet to the fire. What are all of those things? And it's part of it's what you're supposed to do. And I look at some of these so-called reporters who go in there and they act like state media and they ask these sycophantic questions. And I feel so sorry for them. I want to pull them aside and be like, guys, you're going to look back at this in 10 or 15 years from now and just feel like a total idiot and that you've been played and taken advantage of. But let's hope.
Well,
hopefully we're in a good place where we can make those observations.
Do you think independent press like Substack and others, and we're all on it, but do you think that that's a hope for a valuable or a reliable hope for the future to cover?
Yes,
White House?
I mean, to me, we are a response. What we're doing, what we're going through, the explosion of independent media right now, this revolution, it's a response to corporate media just completely bending the knee and not getting the job done. And people can figure this out when ABC and CBS are paying bribes, when Comcast is becoming a donor to the White House ballroom, when Jeff Bezos is a donor to the White House ballroom. I mean, I've never seen major institutions of the national news media be so conflicted and compromised. in covering the president of the United States. And people at home are looking at this. I mean, people can think, oh, we fooled them. You know, they'll never figure this out. Bullshit. People at home can totally figure this out, and they think you guys have lost your minds. And so they're going to come to independent media, and they're going to come to Brian and John, and come to me, Don Lemon, Joy Reid, Katie Couric. There are lots of folks on these platforms now, and lots of these young influencers are on these platforms now because, let's face it, they're just a better option for a lot of people now.
Well, a more viable. I would say yes to that. I would like to see us. There's something of the old media I would like to see us keep. And I always thought that journalism is a collaborative effort, right? You've got a photographer, you've got an editor, you've got a reporter. And as long as there's at least a copy editor involved,
yeah, I know.
And so for someone to hold you accountable, go, where'd you get that quote? Is that your opinion? Let's take that out. Now, opinion stuff like we're doing here is great because everybody needs to be heard, and you're not being heard. And what you said, Jim, is where is the reporting on the mental health, the lack of appearances, all the stuff in the White House that we don't get? You're not getting that unless you're on an independent media source. You simply aren't. But if we don't do anything more than offer opinions, then I don't think we'll be viable. I think we've got to step up our game. John?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges for the industry. You know, shrinking newsrooms is a problem. Brain drain is a problem. You know, when I walked in that room, by the way, it's 10 years ago. This actually 10 years ago. 10 years ago last month that I joined the beat. And when I walked in there, I was one of the younger folks. I walked in there at 35, and I was one of the younger folks. 10 years later, I look around and, you know, you've got people in there. It's their second job. It's their third job. It's stunning. It's stunning how young the press corps has gotten. You know, I toiled and I covered national security and defense. I worked for trade publications. Then I covered Congress. And, you know, it felt like a real grind to get there. But I learned a lot. I learned how this town works, or usually doesn't work very well. And I was able to bring that in to the briefing room, to White House beat, and then keep growing as a professional. But, you know, these folks don't have all that institutional knowledge, the sourcing, and all the generals and admirals and, you know, secretaries and chairmen that I listened to and talked to off the record in hallways on the Hill. I learned a lot from John McCain, for instance. They just don't have that. And that's one thing that you guys aren't experiencing now. Is it is a different vibe. I mean, you still got great folks over there like Steve Holland and other veterans, but there is that younger element.
Steve Holland,
yeah, there is that younger element, and you hear it in the Oval or the cabinet room, wherever we get these pool sprays. You know, some of the questions that aren't from the right-wing publications, it's just they're not as well informed. They're not as sharp as they could be. You know, there's a certain way to ask Donald Trump a question, and a lot of folks don't clear that bar. And when you try to give them advice, you know, especially from some of our new media friends, they don't want to hear it, and that's a problem. And we still got 3 more years of this. So what does the beat look like on Inauguration Day 2027?
I'll look like this.
I'm not really sure. You know, or 2029, I guess.
I'll say
numbers are hard.
All I'll say is what I've told them. I was here before you. I'll be here after you. I'm going to leave it at that.
I have borrowed that line now that you're not around, Brian. I have taken that as my own.
Well, I want to thank you guys for being here, Jim. It's always a pleasure, John. Love you both.